I'm Allison, 29, and 6 months ago, my digital art business was barely keeping me afloat. During our monthly family dinner, my brother Brian looked everyone in the eye and called my career a joke. The worst part? My dad nodded and added, "She's always been a failure." I'll never forget the burning humiliation as I sat there, fighting back tears. Little did they know that their cruel words would become the catalyst for my global success. Before I share how I transformed their mockery into motivation, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had someone underestimate your dreams. Growing up in our Connecticut suburb, I was always the artsy one. My earliest memories involve clutching colored pencils, filling sketchbooks with drawings that my elementary teachers praised. My bedroom walls became galleries of imagination, landscapes, portraits, and abstract pieces that reflected my developing style. By middle school, I was winning local art competitions, though these achievements were typically met with polite nods rather than celebration in our household. My father, Richard, built his identity around his success as an investment banker. Tall, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits, he viewed the world through the lens of financial security and traditional achievement. His idea of success was simple: prestigious university, lucrative career, respectable family. My mother, Nancy, once harbored dreams of becoming a novelist, but tucked them away to raise us. Sometimes I'd catch her scribbling in a journal, only to hastily close it when someone entered the room. Her abandoned passion became a silent warning about the impracticality of creative pursuits. My older brother Brian was my father's carbon copy, captain of the debate team, Ivy League business school, followed by a fast-tracked position at a prestigious financial firm. Family conversations revolved around his promotions, his investments, his achievements. He was the golden child who could do no wrong, the standard against which I was constantly measured and found wanting. My younger sister Kimberly, still in college, perfected the art of walking the line, majoring in economics to please our parents while minoring in photography to nurture her own interests. She was the diplomat of the family, never rocking the boat like I did. Art was tolerated in our home as a nice hobby, but never respected as a viable career path. When I announced my intention to attend art school instead of pursuing business like Brian, the dinner table fell silent. My father eventually agreed to pay the tuition, though not without frequent reminders that he was investing in a degree with questionable returns. Each semester, he'd review my courses with thinly veiled disappointment. Experimental digital media? How exactly will that put food on the table, Allison? Family gatherings became exercises in deflection. Aunt Marjorie would innocently ask, "How's the art going, dear?" before my father would interject with, "She's still figuring things out." Brian, tell everyone about your new client portfolio. My accomplishments, winning a student exhibition, having work featured in a local gallery, were downplayed as cute diversions rather than professional milestones. After graduation, I transformed the second bedroom of my modest apartment into a digital art studio. My setup wasn't fancy: a refurbished desktop with a decent graphics card, a drawing tablet I'd saved 6 months to afford, and walls plastered with inspiration and project timelines. I worked harder than I ever had, often pulling 70-hour weeks between my part-time barista job and building my digital art portfolio. Small victories began to materialize. My Instagram following grew from friends and family to a modest community of 5,000. A local boutique commissioned me to design their seasonal catalog. A small tech startup hired me to create their brand identity. These weren't life-changing sums, but they represented progress, tangible evidence that my chosen path could lead somewhere. My bank account didn't reflect my effort. After rent, student loans, and the constant need to upgrade equipment and software, I was barely breaking even. Each month was a financial tightrope walk. Meanwhile, Brian bought a luxury condo in the city, and my parents never failed to mention how settled he was at our age. Despite the financial struggle, I felt I was finally gaining momentum. The boutique owner had referred me to several colleagues. My latest Instagram posts were getting more engagement than ever. A promising online retailer had expressed interest in a potential ongoing partnership that could provide stable income. For the first time, I had concrete success to share at our monthly family dinner, something that might finally earn their respect and prove that my chosen path wasn't just a whimsical detour on the road to inevitable failure. I rehearsed how I'd present my news during the drive to my parents' house, hoping this time would be different. This time, I thought they might actually see that my persistence was paying off, that art wasn't just a hobby, but my profession and passion. Maybe they'd finally understand that success doesn't always wear a business suit or come with a corner office. Little did I know that this dinner would become both my lowest point and the unexpected catalyst for everything that followed. The April evening was unseasonably warm as I pulled into my parents' driveway, carefully balancing the homemade tiramisu I'd spent the morning preparing. Their Tudor-style home stood imposing as ever, manicured gardens framing the entrance, where my mother's prized roses were just beginning to bloom. I took a deep breath, mentally rehearsing the casual way I'd mention my recent accomplishments without seeming desperate for approval. There she is. My mother, Nancy, opened the door before I could knock, embracing me with the scent of her signature perfume. Everyone's already here. Brian brought a bottle of champagne to celebrate his promotion. Of course he did. I smiled and followed her through the familiar hallway lined with family photos, mostly Brian's achievements, my graduation tucked discreetly between his football championships and academic awards. The dining room gleamed with the formal table setting reserved for monthly family dinners. Grandmother's china, sterling silver flatware, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier. My father and Brian stood by the fireplace, deep in conversation about market trends, both in button-down shirts, even for a casual family gathering. Kimberly was setting the table, offering a sympathetic smile as I entered. The prodigal artist arrives, Brian announced, raising his whiskey in mock salute. How's the starving artist lifestyle treating you, sis? I ignored the jab. I brought dessert. Wonderful, my mother interjected, taking the tiramisu. Richard, pour Allison some wine. Dinner's almost ready. The initial conversation remained pleasantly superficial, neighborhood gossip, Kimberly's upcoming finals, the unseasonable weather. I waited for my opening, allowing myself to relax slightly as we moved to the table, and my mother served her pot roast, my father's favorite. Brian dominated the conversation, detailing his recent promotion. The youngest senior financial analyst in the firm's history, he announced, accepting our father's proud clap on his shoulder. They're putting me in charge of the Peterson account. That's a 7-figure portfolio. That's my boy. Dad beamed, raising his glass. To Brian, carrying on the Harrison family tradition of excellence. Everyone drank. I used the momentary lull to gather my courage. I actually have some exciting news too, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Remember that online retailer I mentioned last time? They want to partner with me on a regular basis. It could mean stable income and much wider exposure for my work. My mother nodded vaguely. That's nice, dear. Kimberly, how are your economics classes going this semester? I persisted, pulling out my phone. I also just finished this commission for a boutique that's expanding to 3 locations. They want my designs for all their branding materials. I displayed my portfolio, sliding the phone toward my father, who glanced at it briefly before passing it along. And my Instagram following has nearly doubled in the past 2 months. One of my posts got shared by that design blog I've been following forever. Brian chuckled, the sound cutting through the awkward silence. Still doodling on your computer and calling it a career? That's cute, Al. It's not doodling, I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Digital art is a legitimate field with real commercial applications. These are paying clients. How much? My father asked abruptly. What's your annual income from this passion project? The question hit like a slap. I'm building something, I replied defensively. These things take time too. So not enough to cover your rent without waiting tables. Brian interrupted. Meanwhile, my quarterly bonus was more than you'll make all year. Not everything is about money, I countered, though we all knew that in this family it absolutely was. Brian set down his fork, making eye contact with everyone at the table before landing on me. Let's be honest, your career is a joke compared to real jobs. You're almost 30, sharing an apartment, and playing with Photoshop while calling yourself a professional. It's time to grow up. The table fell silent. I waited, hoped, for someone to defend me. My mother studied her plate. Kimberly looked out the window. And then came the worst blow of all. My father sighed heavily, setting down his glass. She's always been chasing fantasies. Some people just aren't cut out for success. Not everyone has what it takes to make it in the real world. The words landed like physical blows. My chest tightened, making it difficult to breathe. My hands began to shake beneath the table as I clenched them into fists to maintain composure. I have clients, I managed, my voice barely audible. Real businesses that value my work. Hobby businesses run by your friends don't count, Brian scoffed. Dad's right. You need to face reality. My phone buzzed, offering a blessed escape. Excuse me, I mumbled, standing on unsteady legs. I need to take this. No one was calling. I locked myself in the powder room, pressing my palms against the cool marble vanity as silent tears streamed down my face. Through the door, I could hear the dinner conversation continuing without missing a beat, Brian discussing his new car, my mother asking if he was seeing anyone special. I splashed cold water on my face, reapplying minimal makeup and practicing a neutral expression in the mirror. After 10 minutes, I returned with a fabricated story about a client emergency requiring my early departure. On a Saturday night, my father questioned skeptically. Creative industries don't operate on banking hours, I replied, gathering my things. My mother frowned. But you haven't had dessert. I'm not hungry anymore, I said, kissing her cheek mechanically. Congratulations again, Brian. See you next month. No one tried very hard to convince me to stay. As I closed the front door behind me, I heard my father's voice. That's the problem with her generation. No commitment, no resilience. If only he knew how much resilience it took just to start my car instead of collapsing in grief right there in their driveway. Rain had started by the time I left my parents' neighborhood, matching my mood as I navigated the familiar streets. Tears blurred my vision until I finally had to pull over at a deserted park overlook. I shut off the engine and let the emotion overtake me deep, heaving sobs that seemed to come from some wounded place I hadn't known existed. She's always been chasing fantasies. Your career is a joke. Some people just aren't cut out for success. The words replayed on loop, each repetition cutting deeper. The worst part wasn't just what they'd said. It was the casual cruelty with which my own family had dismissed years of hard work, dedication, and passion. It was the realization that they'd never believed in me. Not really. They'd been waiting for me to fail all along. At midnight, I called Rachel, my closest friend since art school, who now worked in marketing for a tech company. They're wrong about you, ally, she insisted after I'd recounted the evening between hiccuping sobs. Your work is incredible. You just haven't found your right audience yet. Maybe they're right, I whispered. Maybe I'm deluding myself. I'm almost 30 and barely making rent. Van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime, Rachel countered. Success in creative fields isn't linear like Brian's finance career. It's exponential. Nothing happens until suddenly everything happens. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had taken root. Back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. $843.27 in checking, $1,274 in savings, the sum total of my financial security. Not even enough for 2 months' rent. I scrolled through recent client emails, searching for validation, but finding only small projects with modest pay. What if my family was right? What if I was just prolonging the inevitable failure? The sensible thing would be to update my resume. apply for corporate design positions, join the ranks of creative souls who surrender their dreams for stability. Sleep eluded me. At 2 a.m., I found myself pulling out old portfolios from college, projects that had earned awards, professors' comments praising my unique perspective and technical skill. I rediscovered the passion and conviction that had once burned so brightly before years of financial struggle and family doubt had dimmed it. Something shifted inside me as the night deepened. The hurt began transforming into something harder, more determined. If I was going to fail, I would fail spectacularly, on my own terms, not by quietly surrendering to their expectations. By 3 a.m., a strange calm had replaced my earlier anguish. I opened a new document and began typing with feverish intensity. Not a resignation letter, but a business plan. Not an admission of defeat, but a declaration of war. I identified every weakness in my current approach: inconsistent social media presence, underpricing my work, targeting too small clients, neglecting to build industry connections, failing to develop a distinctive style that would make my work instantly recognizable. Until sunrise, I researched successful digital artists, studying their trajectories, business models, and positioning. I analyzed their client bases, pricing structures, and marketing strategies. I created spreadsheets comparing their follower growth against mine, looking for patterns and opportunities. By morning, I had crafted a comprehensive 90-day plan with specific financial targets, content calendars, outreach strategies, and skill development goals. I would give myself 3 months of absolute dedication, not just to prove my family wrong, but to prove myself right. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a text from Kimberly. "You okay?" They shouldn't have said that. I stared at her message for a long moment before responding with simple determination. I'm going to prove them wrong. The words felt different once typed out, not just emotional reaction, but genuine promise. Something had fundamentally changed during those dark hours. The dinner that was meant to break me had instead crystallized my resolve. I had been playing at being a professional artist. Now I would become one. I showered, changed, and made coffee, feeling strangely energized despite the sleepless night. The hurt remained, a dull ache beneath my breastbone, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, it fueled me. Every dismissive word, every skeptical glance, every backhanded compliment would become kindling for the fire I was about to ignite. They thought my career was a joke? Fine. I would make sure the punchline landed at their expense. The Monday after the disastrous family dinner, I made 2 decisive calls. The first was to Margaret Wilson, my former art professor who had transitioned from academia to running a successful digital art gallery. The second was to a bank where I applied for a small business loan, exactly the kind of financial risk my father would have discouraged. "Bring your portfolio and business plan tomorrow morning," Margaret said, her voice carrying the no-nonsense tone I remembered from critiques. "And Allison? Be prepared for honesty, not coddling." The gallery occupied a renovated industrial space downtown, minimalist white walls showcasing digital art installations that commanded thousands of dollars from collectors and commercial clients. Margaret's office reflected her practical approach to creative business, organized, efficient, with artwork displayed alongside business awards. "Your technical skills are excellent," she noted, scrolling through my portfolio. "But your presentation is amateurish. You're positioning yourself as a hobbyist, not a professional." For 2 hours, she systematically dismantled my approach to business, from pricing, embarrassingly low, to website design, generic templates screaming unprofessional, to client targeting, small fish in puddles when you should be hunting in oceans. "You're selling yourself as a service provider when you should be positioning as a creative partner," Margaret explained. "Commercial clients don't want someone who takes orders. They want vision, perspective, distinctive style. They're not buying your time. They're buying your unique creative voice." I left with a notebook full of actionable advice and Margaret's promise to make introductions to several gallery owners and commercial art directors if I implemented her suggestions first. The bank approved my $15,000 loan the following week. My father would have been horrified at the interest rate, but I saw it as investment capital, not debt. I immediately upgraded my equipment, purchased industry-standard software, and rented a small studio space in an artist's collective downtown. My apartment became purely residential, while my new studio became command central for Operation Reinvention. I covered one wall with a massive calendar tracking daily, weekly, and monthly goals. Another displayed competitive analysis of successful artists in my niche. A third showcased mood boards for my evolving signature style. I cut expenses to the absolute minimum. No more takeout, no streaming services, no new clothes. Every dollar went toward building my business. 16-hour days became normal, researching industry trends before dawn, creating portfolio pieces until noon, client work until evening, administrative tasks until midnight. With Rachel's marketing expertise, I developed an aggressive social media strategy. You need to triple your content output while improving quality, she advised during a working session. Consistency builds audience, but distinctiveness keeps them engaged. I analyzed which of my previous posts had performed best, identifying elements that resonated with viewers. A pattern emerged, my work combining traditional artistic techniques with digital innovation received the most engagement. I developed this direction, creating a recognizable style where classical composition principles met cutting-edge digital execution. The first small breakthrough came when Design Forward, a popular industry blog, featured my rebranded portfolio in their Emerging Talent section. Allison Harrison bridges the digital traditional divide with work that feels simultaneously timeless and contemporary, they wrote. The feature generated modest traffic to my website and added several hundred followers to my Instagram. Rejection remained a constant companion. For every potential client who expressed interest, 5 others declined. For every successful pitch, countless emails went unanswered. I kept a rejection wall in my studio, printing each no thanks email as motivation. Each one refined my approach for the next opportunity. Physical exhaustion became my new normal. I developed tension headaches from hunching over my tablet for hours. My eyes burned from screen fatigue. I ignored these warning signs, pushing harder, working longer. One particularly grueling week, I slept at my studio for 3 consecutive nights, subsisting on protein bars and cold coffee. Margaret checked in regularly, offering brutally honest feedback on each portfolio update. Better, but not distinctive enough yet, she'd say, or the concept is strong but the execution lacks refinement. Her standards seemed impossible to meet, which was precisely what I needed. Rachel force-fed me marketing tactics from her corporate playbook. You're not just an artist. You're a brand, she insisted, helping me craft an elevator pitch and teaching me to speak about my work with confidence rather than apologetic hesitation. Stop qualifying your statements, she scolded during a practice session. Don't say, I think this design might work for your brand. Say, this design elevates your brand through strategic visual storytelling. Confidence isn't arrogance when it's backed by skill. After 6 weeks of transformation, my Instagram following had grown from 5,000 to nearly 25,000. My revised portfolio attracted higher quality inquiries. Small but respectable commissions trickled in corporate identity packages for startups, editorial illustrations for online publications, animated graphics for small business websites. None were life-changing, but together they provided sustainable income while building my professional reputation. More importantly, each new project improved my portfolio, creating a virtuous cycle of better work attracting better clients. Then came the email that would change everything. Your portfolio was recommended by Margaret Wilson, it began. I'm working with indie musician Eliza Monroe on her debut album release. Your aesthetic seems perfect for what we're envisioning. Available to discuss. The sender, James Thornton, was a music industry marketing director known for innovative album campaigns. Eliza Monroe was an emerging singer-songwriter generating industry buzz. This wasn't just another small commission, it was an opportunity for significant exposure. The initial video call was terrifying. James and Eliza described their vision for artwork that would encompass album cover, merchandise, social media assets, and potential animation for lyric videos. The timeline was brutally tight, 2 weeks from concept to final delivery. We're looking for something that captures Eliza's sound, nostalgic but fresh, emotional but not sentimental, James explained. Can you handle the scope on this timeline? The old Allison would have hedged, worried about overpromising. The new Allison said simply, absolutely. When can I hear the music? What followed was the most intense 2 weeks of my professional life. I immersed myself in Eliza's music, filling sketchbooks with visual interpretations of her lyrics. I created mood boards, color studies, typography explorations. I developed 3 distinct concept directions, each with comprehensive visualization across all platforms. I slept perhaps 4 hours nightly, fueled by determination and deadline pressure. When my eyes couldn't focus anymore, I would set a 20-minute timer, nap on the studio couch, then resume work. The project consumed me entirely. The night before the presentation, I refined every pixel, tested every animation, proofread every typographic element. My hands shook from caffeine and exhaustion as I assembled the final presentation. The video call with James and Eliza felt surreal. I presented each concept with professional confidence that masked my internal terror. When I finished, the silence stretched uncomfortably. Wow, Eliza finally said. These are all incredible, but the second concept, it's like you crawled inside my head and pulled out exactly what I couldn't articulate. This is better than I imagined. James nodded agreement. We're going with concept 2. No revisions needed. This is perfect as is. I managed to maintain composure until the call ended, then collapsed onto my studio floor, crying from relief and triumph. The album artwork wasn't just approved, it was celebrated. This wasn't just a successful project, it was vindication. What I didn't know then was that this project would become the turning point that would thrust me from struggling artist to global success faster than even I could have imagined. Eliza Monroe's album dropped 3 weeks after I delivered the final artwork. Initial industry response was positive, with music blogs praising both the sound and visual identity. My name appeared in the credits, resulting in a modest influx of new followers and several small commission inquiries. It felt like success, but not breakthrough, until the algorithm intervened. A TikTok video of a teenager dancing to Eliza's lead single went viral, generating millions of views within days. Suddenly, an album that industry insiders had expected to perform well in niche markets was exploding into mainstream consciousness. As the music gained traction, my artwork appeared everywhere: streaming platforms, music blogs, reaction videos, fan art recreations. My Instagram following exploded overnight, 25,000 to 100,000 in 72 hours. My website crashed from traffic surge. My inbox flooded with messages from potential clients, fans, and industry professionals. The real game changer came when Eliza appeared on National Morning Today, a major television program with millions of viewers. The host held up the physical album, praising its distinctive artwork. The visual identity is as compelling as the music, he remarked. Who created this? Allison Harrison, Eliza answered without hesitation. She's an incredible artist who perfectly captured the soul of this project. We were lucky to find her. My phone began buzzing incessantly as the segment aired. Rachel called, screaming incoherently with excitement. Margaret texted a characteristic understatement. Good exposure. Capitalize immediately. Artbeat magazine requested an interview for their digital edition, featuring my work in an article titled Visual Storytelling in Music: How Allison Harrison's Artwork Amplifies Eliza Monroe's Breakout Album. The piece highlighted my design process, artistic influences, and distinctive style bridging traditional and digital techniques. Harrison represents a new generation of commercial artists who refuse to sacrifice artistic integrity for marketability, instead finding innovative ways to deliver both, the writer concluded. The article was shared thousands of times across social platforms. Then came the email that truly changed everything. Dear Ms. Harrison, I represent Velocity Athletic Wear's marketing department. We're developing a global campaign for our new performance line and believe your distinctive artistic approach would create significant brand differentiation in a crowded marketplace. Are you available to discuss a potential collaboration? Velocity was no small brand. It was a multinational athletic wear company with storefronts in 37 countries. Their campaigns appeared on billboards in major cities worldwide, in high-profile magazines, and across digital platforms with nine-figure advertising budgets. The meeting occurred in their sleek corporate headquarters, where I presented my portfolio to a marketing team of 15 executives. The old insecurity threatened briefly, but I channeled Rachel's coaching on projecting confidence. My work creates emotional connection through visual storytelling, I explained, walking them through my process. For Velocity, I envision a campaign that captures the transcendent moment when physical exertion transforms into artistic expression, where athletics and aesthetics converge. Their initial brief had suggested standard athletic imagery with graphic overlays. I proposed something more ambitious, a series where athletes in motion were transformed into artistic elements, their movements creating dynamic visual patterns unique to each sport. Traditional artistic techniques would blend with cutting-edge digital execution, creating something simultaneously familiar and innovative. This is a significant departure from our previous campaigns, the marketing director noted. It's risky. Less risky than looking like every other athletic brand, I countered. This approach offers genuine differentiation in a visually saturated marketplace. The room fell silent. I had either overstepped or impressed them, I couldn't tell which. We'll need comprehensive mock-ups before proceeding, the director finally said. Can you deliver concept visualizations for 3 sports within 2 weeks? I could and did. Working around the clock, I created sample executions for running, basketball, and yoga that transformed athletic movement into distinctive artistic expressions. The mock-ups were accompanied by adaptations across platforms, billboards, magazine spreads, Instagram carousels, website animations. The presentation of these concepts led to a second meeting, this time including Velocity's CEO. After intense discussion about brand positioning and target demographics, they greenlit the concept, with a 6-figure contract that required me to engage an attorney to negotiate terms. The agent Margaret recommended specialized in artist representation. They're lowballing you, she informed me after reviewing their offer. Your concept is the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar global campaign. Your compensation should reflect that. The subsequent negotiation doubled my fee and included usage rights limitations that protected my creative ownership. The final contract included prominent artist credit on all campaign materials, unusual for commercial work at this scale. Production involved traveling to shoots in 3 countries, working with world-class photographers and elite athletes. I directed artistic elements of each session, then spent weeks in post-production transforming raw imagery into the artistic vision I'd presented. When the campaign launched simultaneously across 5 continents, seeing my work on massive scales was surreal. My artistic vision appeared on Times Square billboards, London bus shelters, Tokyo subway stations, and countless digital platforms. The campaign hashtag generated millions of engagements as people shared photographs of installations in their cities. My Instagram following surpassed 1 million. Commission requests poured in, requiring me to hire an assistant just to manage inquiries. Commercial clients who had previously ignored my portfolio now offered premium rates. Galleries that had declined my submissions now extended exhibition invitations. Financial security arrived with stunning swiftness. The velocity payment alone exceeded my previous annual income several times over. Subsequent projects commanded rates I would have considered impossible months earlier. For the first time, I could choose projects based on creative interest rather than financial necessity. I moved from my modest apartment to a spacious loft with separate living and studio areas. I upgraded equipment, hired part-time administrative support, and even began setting aside retirement savings, a concept that had seemed laughably distant before. National Morning Today, the same program where Eliza had mentioned my name, now requested an interview with me. The segment would focus on my rapid rise in the commercial art world and the distinctive style that had captured global attention. Throughout this whirlwind, one fact remained constant. My family had maintained complete silence. Despite my artwork appearing in national media, despite my name becoming recognized in creative industries, despite the undeniable evidence of my success, not a single congratulatory call or text. Their silence was conspicuous, but no longer painful. For the first time, I realized I didn't need their validation to recognize my own success. The night before my television interview, I stood alone in my new apartment, surveying the space that my joke of a career had provided. I allowed myself a moment of pure emotion, crying not from hurt or vindication, but from genuine pride in what I had accomplished through perseverance, talent, and sheer determination. The path had been harder without family support, but the success was entirely my own. The next morning, as makeup artists prepared me for national television appearance, my phone buzzed with a text from Kimberly. "Dad saw your billboards downtown. Watching you tomorrow. So proud of you." The circle was about to close. The family that had dismissed my career was about to witness its undeniable success, along with several million other viewers. The television appearance generated another wave of attention. Looking poised and professional in the studio lights, I discussed my artistic approach, creative process, and unexpected career trajectory without once mentioning my family's lack of support. The interviewer praised the distinctive style that had taken the commercial art world by storm, while I maintained the confident humility Rachel had coached me to project. Hours after the segment aired, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "Saw you on TV this morning. Pretty impressive stuff, sis." His message carried none of his usual condescension, just awkward acknowledgement of success he could no longer dismiss. I let the text sit unanswered, uncertain how to respond after months of silence. The next day, my mother's email arrived, carefully worded, characteristically indirect. "Darling, your father and I caught your interview. You spoke so eloquently about your work. The Velocity campaign is appearing everywhere, Mrs. Henderson from down the street mentioned seeing it and was quite impressed to learn you're the artist behind it. We'd love to hear more about your exciting new projects. Will you be joining us for the monthly dinner this Sunday? Everyone will be there." The monthly dinner invitation, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't shattered my confidence and dismissed my life's work. As if we could simply resume normal family relations without addressing the crushing weight of that April evening. My immediate instinct was to decline. Why subject myself to their presence when I no longer needed their approval? My success spoke for itself. I had nothing to prove and no obligation to pretend everything was fine. That evening, I called Dr. Bennett, the therapist I'd started seeing after the breakthrough with Velocity. "They want me at family dinner," I explained. "Part of me wants to go and throw my success in their faces. Another part wants to ignore them entirely. Neither feels right." "What would represent genuine healing for you?" she asked. Not vindication, not avoidance, but actual resolution. The question stayed with me for days as I considered my options. Vindictiveness wouldn't heal the wound. Neither would perpetual estrangement. True healing would require confronting the pain directly, not to inflict hurt in return, but to establish new boundaries based on mutual respect. I finally texted my mother. "I'll be there Sunday. There are things we need to discuss." The week before the dinner, I rehearsed what needed to be said, not accusatory rants but clear, honest statements about how their dismissal had affected me. Dr. Bennett helped me craft language that was assertive without being aggressive, vulnerable without being victimized. Sunday arrived with unnerving swiftness. I dressed purposefully in a simple but expensive designer dress, professional, confident, successful. I drove my recently purchased car, modest but new, to the familiar suburban house, arriving exactly on time rather than my habitual 10 minutes early. My mother answered the door with the same greeting as always, "There she is," though her embrace seemed tentative, almost cautious. The house smelled of pot roast, my father's favorite, a detail that suddenly struck me as symbolic of how little had changed in their world despite the seismic shifts in mine. Brian stood awkwardly by the fireplace, our father beside him. Both attempted casual smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Kimberly hugged me genuinely, whispering, "You look amazing. So glad you came." Dinner began with uncomfortable small talk, neighborhood gossip, Kimberly's summer internship plans, the unseasonable weather. No one mentioned my career until we were halfway through the main course. So, my father finally ventured, setting down his fork with deliberate care. "Velocity. That's a major company. National campaign. Must be quite lucrative." There it was. Success measured exclusively in financial terms. "The compensation is appropriate for the scale of the project," I replied neutrally. "The creative challenge and global exposure were equally valuable." "Always knew you had potential," Brian interjected with forced joviality. "Just needed the right opportunity to showcase your talents." The blatant revision of history might have enraged me months earlier. Now it simply confirmed the necessity of the conversation to come. "My colleagues were quite impressed when I mentioned you're my sister," Brian continued. "Several of them recognized your work immediately. One even has your Eliza Monroe album cover framed in his apartment." My mother nodded encouragingly. "We've been following all the excitement. So many opportunities coming your way. We always believed you'd find your path eventually." The collective rewriting of reality was almost amusing in its transparency. No acknowledgement of their dismissal, no recognition of the pain they'd caused, just a convenient narrative where they'd supported me all along. I set down my utensils and took a deliberate breath. "I need to address what happened at our April dinner," I said calmly. "When Brian called my career a joke and Dad agreed that I'd always been a failure." The table fell silent. My father studied his wine glass. My mother's smile froze in place. "Those words hurt deeply," I continued. "Not just because they were cruel, but because they confirmed what I'd always suspected, that my chosen path was never respected in this family." "Allison, surely you're exaggerating," my mother began. "I'm not," I interrupted firmly. "I remember exactly what was said. So do all of you." Kimberly nodded slightly, eyes downcast. "The truth is, your lack of support made everything harder. When I most needed encouragement, I received dismissal. When I sought understanding, I found judgment." That dinner wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that my creative ambitions weren't valued. My father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we were concerned about your financial security. Creative fields are notoriously unstable." "That would be valid concern," I acknowledged. But what I experienced wasn't concern, it was contempt. There's a profound difference between "I worry about your financial future" and "your career is a joke." Brian shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I said some things I shouldn't have. This isn't about extracting apologies," I clarified. "It's about establishing truth so we can move forward honestly. I've built my success without your support or validation. I don't need either now. What I do need, if we're to have a relationship going forward, is respect for my choices, my career, and my boundaries." My father's expression tightened. "You've clearly done well for yourself. Financial success speaks for itself. Perhaps we underestimated the commercial viability of your talents." Even now, he could only frame achievement in monetary terms. My success isn't measured solely by income, I replied. It's measured by creative fulfillment, by building something meaningful on my own terms. That's something I wish this family understood. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table until my mother attempted to lighten the mood. Who would like dessert? I've made your favorite cheesecake, Allison. Before dessert, I continued, I want to be clear about my boundaries going forward. I won't participate in family gatherings where my career or choices are belittled. I won't engage with condescension disguised as concern. I'm willing to rebuild relationships based on mutual respect, but not to pretend the past didn't happen. My directness clearly discomfited them. Such explicit boundary setting violated the family's unspoken rule of smoothing over conflicts rather than addressing them directly. Well, my father finally said, attempting an awkward chuckle, you've certainly developed confidence along with your success. Perhaps our skepticism provided motivation. Sometimes tough love is what drives achievement. I smiled without humor. Let's not reframe cruelty as strategy. You weren't trying to motivate me. You were dismissing me. Owning that truth is the first step toward actual relationship. Brian looked genuinely uncomfortable now. For what it's worth, I've shown your portfolio to several colleagues. They were extremely impressed. One asked if you might consider designing materials for his department's annual report. I appreciate the acknowledgement, I replied. My schedule is quite full with committed projects, but he's welcome to contact my assistant for potential availability next quarter. The professional response. Mentioning my assistant, my schedule, my selective availability, subtly reinforced how much had changed. I was no longer the supplicant seeking approval, but a professional whose time and talent commanded respect. As dinner concluded and I prepared to leave, Kimberly followed me to my car. That was intense, she said quietly. But necessary. They've been weird ever since your TV appearance, trying to claim they always supported you while simultaneously being shocked by your success. How are things for you? I asked, suddenly realizing how focused I'd been on my own situation. She hesitated. I'm switching my major to photography next semester. Haven't told them yet. It won't be easy, I warned. No, she agreed. But watching you succeed doing what you love, it made me realize I don't want to spend my life doing what they think I should. I hugged her tightly. Whatever happens, you have support. My guest room is always available. Driving away from my childhood home, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. Not the vindication I'd once craved, but something more valuable, liberation from seeking approval I'd never receive and validation I no longer needed. The family reckoning hadn't provided neat resolution or tearful reconciliation. Instead, it had established new terms for potential relationship, honest, boundaried, and rooted in reality rather than comfortable fiction. Whether they could meet these terms remained to be seen, but for the first time, their inability to do so wouldn't determine my worth or happiness. I had proven them wrong not just professionally but personally, showing that success could be achieved without sacrificing authenticity or accepting their limited definition of achievement. The greatest victory wasn't the global campaign or financial security, but the internal freedom from their judgment, a freedom that had finally allowed me to become fully myself. 1 year after the Velocity campaign catapulted my career into global recognition, I stood in a downtown gallery surrounded by my artwork, not commercial pieces, but personal expressions created between client projects. The exhibition, titled Thresholds, explored moments of transformation through my signature blend of traditional and digital techniques. The opening night crowd included art critics, industry professionals, and collectors, the artistic legitimacy I had once craved. But more surprising was the presence of my family, standing somewhat awkwardly near the entrance, clearly uncertain of their place in this world. My relationship with them had evolved into something neither warm nor estranged, a careful cordiality maintained through monthly calls and occasional coffee meetings. They had made efforts to respect my boundaries, though old patterns sometimes emerged in subtle ways. I had learned to address these moments directly rather than internalizing the hurt. As attendees circulated through the gallery, my mother approached, champagne flute in hand. She studied a particularly personal piece, a digital rendering of a dining table where faceless figures sat in oppressive silence, while one figure glowed with barely contained creative energy. "This is about that dinner, isn't it?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Art transforms experience, even painful ones. "I never told you," she said, voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "but I used to write. Poetry mostly, some short stories. Nothing published." "I know," I replied. "I found your journals once when I was 12. They were beautiful." She looked startled. "You never mentioned it. You always hid them when someone entered the room. It seemed like a secret you weren't ready to share." She gazed at my artwork, expression complicated. "I regret not pursuing it. More than that, I regret discouraging you." Fear becomes a legacy we pass down without intending to. This unexpected vulnerability. The closest she had come to acknowledging her role in my struggle felt like a small but significant breakthrough. Across the room, my father engaged the gallery owner in conversation about investment potential in emerging artists. Ever the businessman, he had accepted my success primarily in terms he understood: financial viability and market positioning. Still, his presence represented a concession that my chosen path had validity, however he chose to frame it. The most dramatic transformation had occurred with Brian, who approached carrying business cards. "These colleagues asked specifically for your contact information," he explained, slightly embarrassed. "Being your brother apparently makes me interesting by association." The role reversal wasn't lost on either of us, him now leveraging our connection for professional advantage. But rather than satisfaction, I felt a complex empathy. Success had expanded my capacity for understanding even those who had hurt me. Kimberly, now completing her photography degree against our parents' continued objections, had displayed remarkable courage in forging her own path. She interned at my studio one day weekly, developing her skill while completing her studies. Watching her navigate family dynamics with growing confidence was perhaps my most meaningful accomplishment. The year following my breakthrough had brought extraordinary professional development. My studio now employed 5 people, 2 digital artists, an administrative assistant, a project manager, and a social media coordinator. We occupied a renovated warehouse space with separate areas for commercial work, personal projects, and client meetings. High-profile campaigns had established my reputation across industries. Museums commissioned interactive installations. Tech companies sought my aesthetic for product launches. A prestigious publisher had contracted a book showcasing my artistic process and commercial work. Financial security was no longer a concern, but a reality that allowed creative freedom and selective client choice. I maintained the discipline and work ethic that had fueled my breakthrough while establishing healthier boundaries around rest and personal time. Beyond professional accomplishment, I had discovered deeper understanding of success itself. The external validation once so desperately sought proved ultimately hollow compared to internal measures: creative integrity, authentic expression, meaningful impact. The most profound lesson emerged through mentoring younger artists facing similar family resistance. Recognizing my painful experience could benefit others, I established a scholarship program for art students from unsupportive backgrounds, providing not just financial assistance, but professional guidance and emotional support. As the exhibition opening concluded, I gathered my team for a celebratory dinner, inviting my family to join. A symbolic bridging of worlds once kept rigidly separate. The conversation remained somewhat stilted, but genuine effort prevailed on all sides. Watching my mother engage my project manager about creative process, while my father discussed business structure with my administrative director, represented small but meaningful progress. Later, alone in my studio, reflecting on the exhibition's success, I recognized how completely my perspective had transformed. The family approval once desperately sought now held diminished importance compared to self-validation and peer recognition. The creative path, once defensive and uncertain, had become confidently self-directed. The painful dismissal at that April dinner had catalyzed not just professional breakthrough, but personal liberation, freedom from external definition and familial constraint. The wound had healed into wisdom, the rejection into resilience. Success wasn't revenge, but revelation. Showing both my family and myself what had always been possible when talent aligned with determination. The greatest victory wasn't proving them wrong, but discovering I no longer needed to. If you're watching this and facing similar dismissal of your creative ambitions, remember that others' limited perspective doesn't define your potential. Your path may require more determination without family support, but authentic success remains possible, perhaps even more meaningful for being self-validated rather than externally approved. The journey from humiliation to triumph taught me that creativity combined with persistence can indeed become a viable career, despite what skeptics and traditional thinkers might claim. Sometimes the voices telling you something is impossible simply lack imagination to envision new possibilities. What dreams are you pursuing despite others' doubts? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Your support helps these stories reach others facing similar challenges. Remember, the people who say your dreams are impossible are usually just telling you about their limitations, not yours. Thank you for listening, and never stop creating your own path to success.